So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iman Ahmed. I am a software engineer at RLM Carriers, and today I'll be talking about RescueMap AI. So I know it's a little bit after lunch, so we're all a little bit relaxed, but hopefully this will be an exciting talk, and love to learn all your thoughts about it. So before I actually dive deeper into what the tool itself is, I wanted to first talk about what the problem is. So as I've met some of you over the past couple of days, and one thing you've all heard me say is that I'm from Florida, or at least I live in Florida. Florida is known for two things, right? It's known for its famous beaches, but it's also known for its hurricanes. And as someone who's lived in Florida for some time now, I have dealt with my fair share of hurricanes. However, with that also comes a lot of disaster. And in immediate aftermath of a disaster, there's oftentimes that a lot of our members of our community are quite vulnerable. And I believe as people and as human beings, we should strive to develop tools that can help our most vulnerable people. And I did notice that there was a huge space of room for improvement, specifically in the rescue and search operations that do happen. I have been part of some more local efforts, and so I do have some first-hand experience. Even to this day, despite it being the 21st century, canine dogs are used often in search and rescue operations. Now, there's nothing wrong with canine dogs, but I think that given the 21st century, we have all of this data, we have AI, we have satellites, we have drones. There is a lot of room for improvement in this. But the issue is, these tools are amazing, and we were yesterday, all of us were at the keynote talk, and we learned a lot about remote sensing. But the issue is that a lot of this data is not, it is applicable to ground level data, but it's not immediate. It's slow, it's fragmented, and it's not really practical on a real-time basis. And so, given all of that, I felt like we needed to work on tools that could, again, assist in immediate situations. So, again, the motivation was simple. Let's see how we can merge software engineering with, again, humanitarian-based, projects, or specifically post-disaster hurricane type of situation. And again, because I have volunteered myself in hurricane response teams, I do have somewhat of an idea. And my basic idea was to empower local teams who have very limited, limited resources, limited tools, and again, they need to have more accessible, tools to deal with that. And so when I did start the development of this tool itself, the biggest challenge that I realized wasn't necessarily technical. There was a lot of structural challenges that I had to face as well. First of all, there was a lot of data out there. Again, FEMA, USGS, but there were several issues with this. When I was looking at data, I was having a hard time, making a sense of their schemas, and how would I merge this, and how would I make this more translatable to local authorities who often lack the bandwidth or the technical expertise to, make sense of that data. So that was one issue, like, okay, there is data, but how is it really translatable to us? And then the other one was that, again, there wasn't any tools that I knew of in immediate effect or that helped local operators. When I say local operators, community-driven efforts. So I was coming in blank. I didn't really have a base template to work off of. And then the third one was that I was looking at actual tools that, perhaps bigger teams do use, more established organizations use. But the issue with specifically with them was that, if we move towards cloud solutions, it's higher cost. And there's a lot of there's cost, and there's a huge learning curve as well. So again, I'm talking about people who are volunteering their time, and also it's a very tight situation. So again, it has to be very simple. That's the development challenges that I was initially facing. Again, this is by no means the entireness. There are hundreds and hundreds of things that did cross my mind, but some of the main ones that I do feel more important to address. And again, cloud-based solutions, the issue was that in a disaster zone, lack of connectivity is perhaps one of the bigger concerns. So it needed to be something that really rely on an existing cloud network. So moving ahead, I thought, what are different ways I could approach this? And I did think of a solution that perhaps we could have a tailor-made solution. Maybe it could be proprietary. But then I realized that no, I want to keep it open source. And the issue is that open source isn't a buzzword choice. That's what I wanted to emphasize. It was, I genuinely think that open innovation really accelerates how, accelerates innovation, right? It accelerates adoption. Maybe I have a specific mindset. Maybe me and some of my friends who are working on this project, if we are, then we come in with this one angle, and then that's it. But with an open source community, when suppose there's another NGO, where there's another response team, maybe in another part of the country, they realize that hey, maybe we could fine tune this aspect, maybe this tool can be introduced, and so on. So I genuinely think that their contributions could accelerate perhaps what I could not see. So, but then there's the other aspect of open source, where especially in a lot of rural areas, to convince your county officials or governments to work on a good software solution, you need to build trust. And if it's like a very private sort of thing, it's really hard to establish that trust. So transparency was a big part of it. Once it's transparent, it's adaptable. Again, their engineers might have a different thought process. Maybe they add specific features for their needs, and so on. And again, I did not want people to be locked into one specific like software. Like, oh, they're stuck with this software. Again, they're paying money, and there's no way they can get out, but it's going to take too much challenge. So that was the thought process. So again, now I started actually the implementation part, and I wanted to keep it like simple, but in a way that there's this application, it takes in certain input. There's a backend that runs. There's certain. Well, I wanted to implement AI as well, and we filter out these results, and then we're given certain performance or actual reports in the user dashboard. That was the base idea of the implementation. Before I actually dive further into it, I really wanted to establish there are key features that I had in mind. Without these key features, I think that from a rescue operator's perspective, rescue operator might not necessarily be the best term, but like community rescue operators who work, volunteer, what are the key features that they're looking for? They're looking for, hey, are there people who need immediate help? If they do, how do we prioritize them? So why don't we think about a scoring system? If there are people that do need help, we have a scoring system. How do we make sure they're verified or unverified? I mean, if we're talking about community-driven, very likely we have crowdsourced data. So so needed to figure out that part. Again, not every situation is necessarily the same. So I had to think about ways, in which we would have verified and unverified information as well. So there were a couple of these things, and then at the end of when I say not every type of situation is the same, perhaps there's a flooding, perhaps there is an issue with power outage in the immediate area. So again, there should be a way to filter all of these things out as well. And then perhaps one of the more key features, it is the key feature, is the live map. So if there is a report that comes in, they can visually see, hey, there's this person who needs help, they're at this location, it's verified, we have a timestamp, multiple reports came in from this particular area, let's go and help them out. So yeah, those were one of the key features that I think really needed to be there. Everything else was, is a good to have thing, but these were the key aspects. And then there was a last part that I know in the past few years, especially in the past couple of months more so, there's been a huge usage in AI, specifically LLM models. And I do think that there's a big use case for this year as well. I'll dive deeper into the AI part of this. In fact, it would be the next slide. So the whole application is called RescueMap AI, but it's the AI specifically behind it doesn't necessarily mean like an LLM model. It's more meant to be a smarter way to validate or detect or filter out things. I'll come back to the LLM part later, but then this specific context in the application that I'm currently working towards, it is a rule-based math. Where we're taking into account distance, we're taking into account time, and it's just simple probability. And then we're clustering information. Maybe there's multiple reports from the place. How can we use that information? If there are multiple, like we're getting in, some officials are reporting. Maybe there's a Twitter feed. I get all of these different ways. We're validating different information. We're ranking them accordingly. So that's the type of, AI might not be the best way. Maybe a machine ML or some sort of like ranking system would be the best way to describe it. But what about LLM models? Is there a scope for that? And I think, especially over the past 2 days, what I've seen with other people's presentations as well and other workshops that I was here, there is definitely for sure a huge scope depend on establishing a future layer that would be, that would take into account an LLM model. And the thing that's important about these type of things is that, suppose, there's an emergency. Again, LLM models have a very good way to process unstructured data. That's the best way to put it. Unstructured data, and but again, what is our base case? What is our use case? Our use case is that we're trying to support people who are on the ground who may not necessarily have access to internet. Maybe they don't have access or active internet, or maybe they might not have access to cloud computing. So that's where I think that there's a really big con with LLM models. But for now, it's deterministic clustering. But the architecture does leave room for more growth in that. However, as I further talk about data collection and things, I think it's important to highlight this one aspect is that and this was touched upon in the keynote talk as well, is that there's certain ethics that do come with working in this domain. Open data doesn't necessarily mean careless data, because every data set, or every information carries sensitivity. I think another part that I do want to emphasize is that I do aim to anonymize locations wherever necessary, protect identities. And so like that data part is, again, people can use that for, nefarious purposes, so we have to be a little bit more careful about that. So just wanted to prioritize that humanitarian AI must be based on consent and traceability. Again, open collaboration really works with each other when communities feel safe to work with. So that's like the key part that I really want to emphasize. But suppose we even do make an application, do make some sort of a tool. I do think that there needs to be a better process or an actual process that people do follow. So part of the training modules that I was working on was like having a pipeline that they understand. There's a group of people that collect data. It could be crowdsourced, it could be officials. They take photos, maybe they're at a location, they see there's a flooding in this area, they take a picture, they report it, and then information goes, and the way we validate it is I'll come back to it later, and then we're visualizing it on the map. Again, if multiple people report, it's a more prominent, we know that it's a more severe issue. So again, this is based not just on community effort, but also local efforts. So the way I've gone about crowdsourcing it is that I think it shouldn't just be crowdsourced. It should be a blend of crowdsourced as well as local, as well as officials as well. So that would be maybe it's straight like firefighters and like all these other rescue operators. But not everyone's reporting is necessarily rated the same. Civilian workers would not be necessarily as high as suppose firefighters. So again, just wanted to maybe streamline that process. Again, it would be rated. It would be a hybrid model would be better rather than just only citizens only. And as for the clustering part, right? Here's the thing, right? This doesn't necessarily depend on like on an AI model. It uses small, algorithms. Clustering means that if there's multiple reports from a small geographic location, where each report comes in has a verified flag. It's multiple from the same location, higher priority. But especially if it's coming from suppose like a channel like FEMA, then that's even a higher priority. So and it's going to be treated as high confidence. Timestamps are also important. And I will come back to the statistics later, but there was a research done and it was found that right after a natural disaster does occur, the likelihood of someone to survive is up to like 72 hours after that. It's not reliable, but it drops drastically after the first 24 hours. So that's something that I did need to take into account, and specifically timestamps, because even if suppose there's a report and it's like 2 days old, at that point, I'm not going to say that it's not worth to be concerned about, but also it should, if there's an immediate other report, then that does take up likelihood of survival into account as well. So with this specific situation where I'm using a more machine learning model, I think it's more simple. Again, if it's part of the open source code, it's not like a black box. Anyone can audit what the ruling is behind how are we prioritizing. They can even change it up if they feel like to. So that's just another aspect to it. And then the visualization part actually comes in. So you have these reports, verified, unverified, higher priority, lower priority. But specifically over verified and unverified, I have it in different colors. So it's not just, and again, I think visual element is also key to it, because if I'm a rescue operator, if I'm looking at a map, I don't want to be trying to click on something to figure out if it's verified or unverified. I should be able to, visually look at it. Okay, all of these are in red, all of these are in green. Okay, and then you just get, because again, we're dealing with tight time. We're dealing with immediate action. That's the type of situation that we're coming in. So smaller things like these, I think, do hold an important place. And yeah, that's the key. And also, right, we also want to talk about, how many verified results do we have? So, if we're looking at there's going to be a dashboard, and maybe it's like 40%, 50%. That also talks about how accurate reporting is being done. I have worked on an MVP, and there's a very basic architectural overview of it. We're using Next.js and Leaflet, and for the backend, we're using the Flask API. And so again, it's a very, like a base model. And for the AI modules, we're using, a Python-based lightweight, machine learning model. And then yeah, it's again very basic architecture. I don't want it to be heavy. Now, it's also important to emphasize that this project itself is also community driven, right? It's based on community engagement. It's not just like a software tool, but I generally see it as a way of more like a collaborative platform. I've started speaking with student volunteers and other civic tech groups that would be, interested in helping us test this out, collect, reports. Also, I've started like talking or thinking about hosting workshops and trying to understand communities like need and importance of open data, and understand just the risks of it, just to get a better idea and understanding. So again, community engagement, community-driven type of platform. This is I think it's a good time to now move towards the live demo, and just to give you all a better idea and a better context for the live demo, there will be like a dashboard, and it's a simple UI. Let me just actually. I thought this was short. Anyways, so yes, this is the actual dashboard itself. It's my cursor. If I zoom out, let me first break this down in itself. There's total number of reports that we have. This is just test data that I had to hard code the values. This is the, on the top you have total number of reports, verified rate. So I sent in some unverified reports as well, and how many of them are duplicates. On the left-hand side, you have a filtering option. So we were talking earlier about filtering, right? So there are different categories. There is, I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to read what the first one is, but yeah, you get my point. There's flooding, there's power lines, there's supply lines. So there's different ways in which you can filter it out, verified and unverified. And then this was about the timestamps, right? Again, in the past, you have to take into account time as well. Someone, if it's been over 72 hours, the likelihood of them, if it's a very dangerous situation, the likelihood of them surviving does go down significantly. And then that's not just it. I mean, on the right side, we have the report summary. And what does that do? So first of all, again, all of this data is all of these test values are linked towards Florida. Again, that's because where I live there. And so if you zoom in, the reason why I have them clustered together, again, if you're in a very closer like tight zone and you have hundreds of people reporting like, hey, we're stuck here, it's very hard for you to view that on the map itself. So I did cluster them together, and I thought it would be a better way. And then if you actually click on the report itself, there's a latitude, longitude, and then there's a timestamp as well on what type of issue it is. This is an unverified report. If you click on this, medical aid requested near temperature in a hospital, this is verified report. And you can, again, filter it out, verified only. You see that there are 2, unverified, there are 3, all of them. And then the timestamp wouldn't really work because these values are timestamped to be a little bit more, they're all more than 72 hours old. But yep, same thing with, type of category of issue that we're dealing with. So yeah, close the report. Again, it is an MVP. There is a lot more work to be done here, and this is just to get an idea of what type of application we're dealing with. So, with that being said, there are certain evaluation goals and benchmarks that I'm actively working on. So, AI needs to validate the clustering logic more. I feel like there's not enough test on latency as well, but specifically the scalability. I want to be able to test out 10,000 reports. Of course, for the sake of for this presentation, I didn't have 10,000 reports, partly because I was worried that I might break the code, but and that's the thing with development, is that you're always working in cycles. Could be that you break something, it could be that you don't. But yeah, those are some of our evaluation goals. Now, just thinking towards the challenges and some of the reflections that I've had is that, again, you're not just dealing with, hey, there's this tool, people need it, but you're also dealing with different types of people and their mentality. And if people don't, well, specifically in the rescue operation field, if people don't trust you, then it's really difficult. So I think trust was a big part. I can't deploy tech that the workers or the people that are using it don't understand or don't trust. AI is a double-edged sword. When people hear the word AI, they also get scared. Oh, what do you mean? You're gonna be like, my personal data is gonna go through AI. If I do introduce LLMs, I have to think about ways in which I maintain that privacy. And then, specifically local adoption, right? I want to target rural areas. And then when you do target rural areas, there's also the part of, like focusing on their training and documentation. But that's a part that I think is easier, but it's just that I have to document this a lot more. Again, the aim isn't really to reinvent the wheel. The aim is to work or just support existing groups. Again, I think this is about, like, as engineers, we should be constantly thinking about ways we can improve our community. And that being said, some of the immediate next steps are that, I do have to integrate the public reporting part, where users can actually report what they've, in my MVP, users should be able to actually actively report an incident. I do instead kind of collaborating with the different university research groups. And yes, mesh is a big part of it. It's beyond the scope of this talk. I would have loved to talk about it, but we are a little bit tight on time. But mesh sensors, basically, another way I thought about would be to actually detect if, help people out, would be to have some sort of device that would help whether or not, if people are supposed to trapped under a rubble. But the issue is that, getting a separate device installed in a disaster zone, first of all, it's challenging to begin with. People won't be willing. So what about using potentially a device like a phone, like an existing device? Can we maybe use a network of that? But would people be willing to, give us access to, some of their phone? Well, not access to their phone, but you get my point. Like certain features on their phone, so that we can help them out. Again, these are different questions that I'm still dealing with, and define, like, the AI part again is a double-edged sword. So yeah, I think to wrap it up, I just want to say that I want to end this with an invitation. This is a community-driven effort, a project. This is not a solo project. It's fully open, it's free to fork, and it's open for contribution. Again, whether you're a developer, a data scientist, a GIS scientist, responder, I think your feedback really matters to me, and genuinely, I think together we can make open disaster, we can help our rescue operators and people who are in need. Thanks so much.